there's several that aren't going to be able to make it today. So, but we've been doing the Zoom meetings for the Power of Place. This pretty much the same since we were emerging and it was still COVID, where we have, do the lecture for all of the expedition members on an introductory basis. And I remember looking at in so many Zoom meetings, looking at many of your all's faces and saying like, this is where Montpelier is, and Gail would be rolling her eyes. So, and so what I thought I'd do is I've got if anybody wants to know what I said for the other September programs, I've got that recorded and I can send it to you all. But I thought we'd do more of kind of an insider edition for the background, and also give a chance that for September, we have two programs coming up. One is a program next week that Gail, you and Tony are going to be on, and I think everybody else is either they've only come one other time, or they're all newbies. So that'll be a fun one to meet new people. And then of course for work study that the rest of you all are going to be on, most everybody is, have been here 20, 30 times. So what I thought I'd do with this is just touch base first to see if anybody has any questions for the expedition coming up. And then I would do talk about some of the project, what we're going to be working on during the expedition, and some of the projects we've been working on over the past year. And that'll give you just kind of a taste for what what we're going to be doing this time. So, but start with everybody set for coming. Anybody have any questions to start off with, or what you'd want to have a question or hear about?
We just might get blown up there to you, depending on what hits tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, no, you'll have a hurricane heading your way. It's hopefully we'll have to see what happens tonight. It looks pretty serious.
We've taken a time out here from getting everything in, so this is kind of our rest for the day.
Oh, okay, good. Well, thanks for spending the rest with us. So.
Well, we've got everything in except the bird feeders, and I'm letting them have nibs until just about dark, and then I'm putting the bird feeders up.
They got to get their strength before the winds come in.
That's correct. They need all the energy they can get.
Yep.
It looked like, Matt, I don't know if this is kind of question you want, but in the different things of your field staff, it looks like you joined a lot of sites, several sites together. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, well, for the expedition this time, and for the work we're doing this fall, we're working on revealing and excavating features at the Overseer's House site. So we've done a major focus on getting kind of the last season of work at the Overseers, which has been the focus of the NEH grant that we applied for and received about 4 years ago. And one of the things we've done as part of that is we've done a lot of work with the MDC, the Montpelier Dissenting Committee, on devising questions on the features we're going to be excavating at the Overseer's site. So we've got a subcommittee of the MDC that's an archaeology group that is who we've been meeting with on a regular basis to devise questions about the Overseer's House site. And so that group is also a group that's going to be very heavily involved in the work we're doing in the burial ground. And so in many ways, this group is headed by Dr. Michael Blakey and Dr. Iris Ford, who are academic advisors and descendant advisors for the NEH grant. But they're also obviously heavily involved with, and there's about 20 other descendants who are part of this committee, but they're also going to be heavily involved in the work we're doing at the burial ground. Because one of the things that we're really have a key focus on right now, and this is what I think inspired Yola Dance to want to come and be the director of Montpelier, is we've got the MDC in Montpelier we have a $5.7 million grant for the memorial at the burial ground. And archaeology is going to be a big part of that in terms of defining the extent of the burial ground. So the memorial is built in a space that is separate from the burial ground, because the descendants don't want the memorial being built atop where the graves are. And when we're doing work in the burial ground, one of the things that's really central to that is, for years we've talked about, our work with the descendant community as being inclusive, and like with inviting descendants out to work on the site. And so and it's not that it was optional, it was additive to our research. But and many of y'all asked this as well, is like, for when we're doing work in the burial ground, what does that mean to descendants? And what there was one field school, a student that said it really well this summer. He said he was from Brazil, and he said, what comes to me is when you're talking about doing work elsewhere at Montpelier, you can include descendants and you can move forward with it. But when you're doing work at the burial ground, there's no way to do work without descendants. There's no way to do work in the burial ground without full inclusion of descendants. It's not an option. And so, because we're working on where their ancestors are buried. So one of the things we're looking at with the Overseer's House is getting the MDC as much as possible familiar with what we do with archaeology that you all know and you all are so familiar with from the work you all have done through the years, but getting folks comfortable with what archaeology is prior to doing the work in the burial ground. And so, because when you think about archaeologists digging in a burial ground, what do you think? What comes to mind immediately?
Destruction, of course.
Yeah, well, most people, there's a long history of archaeologists digging, doing excavations with a focus being human remains, and not often having the consent of the community of descendants. There's various excuses that have been used. This is with Native American and Black American groups, is that there's no way to make connections with the community. And that is, has been time and time again proved to be a very pitiful excuse, because people are around who have connections with these burial grounds. And so one of the things that the MDC has directed us to do is, and what they've emphasized is, they don't want to have any of their ancestral remains disturbed in the process of archaeology. What our focus is with the burial ground is pretty much, what we do in so much of archaeology that you all have done, is basically looking at landscape archaeology. It's understanding how that landscape appeared to the community some 200 years ago. And so for that, we're not looking at human remains, we're looking at the built landscape, the fences, how the graves are marked, whether or not sections of the burial ground were plowed, and when. And so much of this is really well demonstrated. How we do this with the archaeology is really well demonstrated in the work we're doing at the Overseer's House. Because with the Overseer's House, we're opening up large areas to expose features. And while we're excavating those features, like 90% of the work that we've done isn't the feature excavation, it's trying to find those and then understand how those features relate to the rest of the landscape from what we found, in the first foot of soil. So this, in a lot of ways, is the same operating model that we're going to be using in the burial ground. And of course, in the burial ground, there's one of the main ways to understand the burial ground is through where the grave shafts are. So we've been doing a lot of ground penetrating radar this summer, and we got another GPR survey that's going to be either the week of the work study at the end of September, or the week between September and October. I got to see. We just found out today we got a state grant to do that work, so I'm very pumped. I had scheduled the GPR folks to come out and did not have the money to do it. So it's just like they knew. I said, we're looking for a state grant, and fortunately, DHR, Department of Historic Resources, just came through today and said, send your W-9, which means, I'm assuming means we have the grant. So, but yeah, so what I wanted to also let you all know is that in October we're doing on October 5th and 6th we're doing a larger descendant event at the site with Jerome Bias. So many of y'all know and seen programs we've done with him. He does early 19th century cooking. And we've got about 20 descendants that have signed up for that dig and tours. So it's that October 5th and 6th is at the end of an expedition week. And we've got about 10 people on that expedition. So I'm figuring out the schedule, how that will work with the expedition. I think, we're gonna probably use that expedition that week. Everyone will be at the site. There'll be a lot of activity, and we'll be able to use the 5th and the 6th to kind of showcase the expedition, if you will, with tours and participation. And then on the 6th, we're gonna the focus will be on tours of the burial ground, which is what a lot of times we do on Friday. Then also doing a large dinner at Arlington House. Jerome Bias is going to be cooking there, and keep your fingers crossed for good weather for that. So, but this is a long ways from what you asked, Gail. But did that even begin to answer that question?
Well, I just wanted, like when we were in the Midden, there by the South Yard, those units were so close together. And this kind of looks like, all the digs that we've done in the overseer area has been nicely spread out so that you're not hanging your feet in someone else's unit. And it just looks like now you've kind of combined units to make really big unit, which I assume that's to kind of put it all, make the puzzle a little more understandable.
Yep, no, exactly. I could I'll share screens in a minute and I'll show you the units that we've got open and then some of the features. We don't have a drone shot yet. We're going to get that hopefully at the end of this week. We're going to do that just to show kind of a before picture and then have the during and then the after. But I've got a plan map that shows all this in GIS. So, and I'll send you all the experience builder map that has all the current units that are out there. So
Matt, I've got a question on the burial site, because last 2 years I've been working in osteology. So but a question I have is when does that work? So the work's already commencing at this point?
What's that? You said the work's already
It started?
Yeah, the work in the burial ground is just the only thing we're doing is surveys right now. So remote surveys. So Dennis is doing a metal detector survey of the burial ground, which is essentially looking for any iron or metallic objects that are within the first 6 inches to 8 inches of soil. So in the plow zone. So looking for fences, at surface, if there's any evidence for activities in the burial ground that can be seen in the metal detector survey. And one thing he's found, which is really cool, is a number of greatcoat buttons, that are big, larger buttons. And you think about a funeral where you'd have at least 100 people, in a lot of cases more, because you'd have other, at a community funeral, you'd have other folks coming from the neighboring plantations and folks dressed in their finest and people hugging. I mean, Reverend Larry Walker, who's the chair of the MDC, he's also a minister, has officiated over hundreds of funerals. And he said, Matt, that's the time you're going to lose buttons, people hugging each other, buttons, becoming tangled and popping off. And, what Dennis has said is the buttons he's found are some of the highest quality buttons he's seen anywhere. And, these would have been ones that would have been highly curated, but if they're lost at an event, they're not going to be found. So, but Dennis is finding those. So, so a lot of interesting things are starting to show up, but next year is when we're going to be doing excavations at the burial ground, Wendy. And actually tomorrow night, I've got a discussion with the MDC, this archaeology subgroup, that we're going to talk about, how we go about and do expeditions, what the community's comfort level is with doing expeditions at the burial ground. And in areas where, we'd be placing units that would be exposing grave shafts. And, I don't think the question on this, what I don't want to have it be a yes, no question. I mean, could always be the case, but I think it's more of how do we mitigate, what sort of concerns the community has in this area. And because the goal of those excavations is to protect and not disturb any intact human remains. If you all said, Matt, what's the goal of excavations at the burial ground? It wouldn't be a research question. I'd say the first number one goal is not to disturb any intact human remains. And of course, how you do that is, the burials are 4 feet at least in depth, and we're not going to be going that deep. And if we do encounter any human remains, it's probably going to be disturbed.
Yep.
There's groundhog holes, there's all kinds of things that could have happened. And we've got a plan for stopping excavations if we encounter any bone, whether it be an expedition member or an archaeologist. And so yeah, it's exciting because what this is creating is the opportunity for a lot of involvement with the descendant community. And this is something, as you all know, that we've been looking for a long time and looking for different ways to have this happen. And for a lot of descendants that have taken part in the excavations, it's been like you all, that you've had an interest in archaeology for years. And so it's brought you all, or, either an interest or an inclination to want to dig in the dirt. So, and an interest in exploring history through this kind of discovery process. But as you all know, when you talk to your family about this, not everybody has this. A lot of folks are like, why are you going back to Montpelier to dig in the dirt again? And you give them an answer and they kind of look at you like, huh? So many descendants that have come on digs, they get the same questions from family. But now that it's at the burial ground, it brings in, there's a lot more people that are interested in this process. So it's really exciting because, people can see the connection and the need to be involved. So we're seeing this in many ways as a way to model how to get people more involved in archaeology in general, in using the burial ground as a way to do this. And it's something that it'll be a very much a learning process for us all. So this is definitely one thing I wanted to talk with you all about as alumni, because you all have been here and seen everything, we've been through, whether it be the work we went through to get to parity and the defining the constituencies that are involved in archaeology and involved in Montpelier. And then also, how we've had very much an interest in getting, the descendant community very much involved in what we're doing. So this is going to be a topic that we're actually looking towards right now and really excited about. And actually, it's allowing us to see how parity is being actuated at Montpelier, which is really cool. And having Yola be part of this, the new president, will be a great opportunity as well. Y'all have a chance to meet Yola when y'all are here. So,
Matt, I have a question. Do you have you found any type of indication that there was some sort of a boundary? I mean, markers on the around the cemetery to a degree, like wire or post or anything like that?
Tree roots.
That's the dream, Tony. I mean, that's what we're hoping there was, and Dennis will locate it. Because when you think about this, I think I've talked about this with you all when you have been at when we've toured the burial ground, is that in the late 18th, early 19th century, you would have had hogs that would have been loose in the woods. And like around the main house, there's that picket fence that's designed to be an enclosure, but it's actually an exclosure for hogs that are rooting. And you think about having a fresh burial, you'd want to find a way to keep hogs out. So, and whether that's true or not, we got to see. It's might be that it was close enough in that you wouldn't get that kind of disturbance, but I kind of doubt that. So it's something that we're, you know, one thing we're looking at with the metal detector surveys this year. But I think if there isn't that kind of enclosure, Tony, what we're going to be looking at is using the anomalies that show up with the ground penetrating radar of the grave shafts to define where there are and there aren't burials.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be another. So we're using a couple of approaches for that, and we've also been doing some vegetation surveys that give some really interesting results. We'll talk about that when y'all are here, in terms of the preservation of native flora, native floral communities, like native plants that you just don't see anywhere else, like you see in the burial ground. So, but yeah, will anybody else have questions before I do the share screen? And Nancy, good to see your face here. So, Nancy, are you going to be able to come?
No, I have some other travel plans, so it's going to cut into this. But and next year I'll be in Australia for 3 weeks during the dig. Sorry.
Okay, well, another time that you want to come, we get plenty of offerings. So
Fantastic.
And Cindy, I know you and I spoke, and you're still looking at your schedule to see how that might work out. So, oh, you're muted, Cindy.
The classic problem. Yeah, I should be there at least part of the week. I'm planning
Oh,
on
awesome.
that, and maybe the whole week. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Good deal. So, well, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and share screens at this point. Let's see, do this one more. There we go. And I've got the map up here. And can you all see the screen right now?
Yes,
You get, and the map is on there.
Yes.
yes.
The map of Montpelier. Okay, cool. What you know, and to not do what I was going to say I was going to do is here's Montpelier, but for the GIS, you know, we're continuing to integrate all of our data into GIS, and we just I just uploaded about, oh God, about 5,000 records from the unit excavations of the main house. So all these units that you see in here, I've got we're actually digitizing the grove right now. So the southwest yard is the current project that all the Montpelier Archaeological Archive project are working on right now. But I've just ingested everything from the northwest yard, also the north kitchen, and the southeast corner from back in 2004, and then a whole bunch of smaller projects around the main house. But I've got these units brought in, so we've got a lot more data that's available. But also, you know, for what we're doing at the overseer's house, you know, here's over here, the visitor center is right here, and then the Madison Family Cemetery is right here. We were just talking about the burial ground right here with some of the work that we've done here. But for the overseer's house at this site, and let me bring up, I'm going to put the LiDAR on for the background, is where well, you all can, just like what you were saying, Gail, you can basically see where we're working right now, because you've got all these units, just like you're talking about, that are starting to glom together into this larger area. Is we've been able to focus in on the area of this subfloor pit. So this one right here this is what it looked like when back in 2020, when some of you all revealed this pit during some of the summer excavations. And now what we've got is this area opened up on a larger basis. And here's Mac pointing at the feature right before it was we had bisected it. And to see this feature a little bit better, this, you can see it in all its glory right here. This is, can you see my magnifying glass outlining it?
Yeah.
This is the feature coming around here.
Oh, yeah.
And we bisected it along, let's see, yeah, we bisected it along this line and excavated this part of it. And what it turns out is that it looks like these are two subfloor pits that cut each other. So rather than being one massive 8-foot long subfloor pit, there's a subfloor pit that runs along here and then ends about right here. And then this is an earlier one that's larger in this area. And so I don't know if I've got any of the shots from the more recent excavations. Those have not been uploaded yet for the for this feature. So we finished the excavation of this one, and actually you can see this subfloor pit right here. This is the definition of it right in this area. But we're also opening up these units in here to define these features. So, for example, this one right here is, as it was excavated in 2020, is this darker feature that's about 6 inches in depth. And we don't know if this is a subfloor pit, but we're basically opening up all this area in here to see whether or not this is underneath the structure, because this feature definitely is under the structure, but whether the structure extends over here, and then the brick concentration that's over in this area is from the chimney fall. That's what we're trying to figure out. And then while you all are here, we're going to be doing work on the borrow pit up here. And this borrow pit spans across several units. And this one, you can see in this shot right here, this is the edge of the borrow pit coming around here. And this is actually during a work study in 2020, because that's Jeff right there coming around in this direction. So we're excavating all these units to get this one fully revealed, and then we're going to open up at least one 5x5 into this. So one of the things that we're doing now with the overseers is really trying to understand, what all of these features are. So not doing a complete excavation, but doing a bisect into them to be able to understand what they are and then what they represent, based on what we know of other sites. Like, for example, the field quarter right here, we've got all kinds of features that we excavated out of the field quarter, including this subfloor pit, borrow pits that were up here, and then the yard that's in between, and then a trench that was beside the house. We've got some really good comparative data to look at, what we're finding at the overseer's house. And so far, my kind of guess about the overseers is, you look at this plat right here that shows the main house and the mill and the overseer's house in between, I still think it's a log structure, but maybe it had a log chimney base and then a brick flue on top. That's one possibility. So like a lot of early 18th and early 19th century buildings that have a stone chimney that would encase the firebox, and then it has a brick flue on top. You've seen that? Is, whether or not this could be designed, because we were finding a lot of burnt clay in the borrow pit. In this the pit that in this one right here, lots of burnt clay, which shows that it's probably the lining for the firebox. And you'd only have more than likely have a clay lining for a firebox if it wasn't masonry, but it was clay lining to keep the logs from catching on fire. So anyways, a lot of working hypotheses with all this. But what we want to end up with, at the end of this season is, kind of the version of this photo right here. We're going to have focused in on pretty much the area that's right in here where the building is, and then have a really good understanding of what we need to do next in terms of the kind of excavations if we were ever going to come back and reconstruct this building. You know, how many buildings are there? What sort of features are present, and what else we need to do to excavate to complete the excavations in such a way like we did in the South Yard, where in the South Yard, you've got these, you know, much more extensive excavations that we were doing, where, let's see, and you all know the South Yard excavations where we opened up a massive area and got every inch of the building exposed. So we did this for, you know, full reconstructions. So with that, with the overseer, we're going to be digging at the overseers through till the end of October, and then what we're working on right now in conjunction with the overseers is work at the burial ground. And the map right here. And first, before we move over to the burial ground, anybody have any questions about the overseers and what we're going to be doing? Nope. Okay, cool. For the burial ground, we've in the map right here, the polygon that is right, oh, too many polygons here. This polygon right here, this shows the area that we thought was the extent of the burials based on the 2018 survey, ground penetrating radar survey that we did. So, you know, here's the woodlot is this area around here, and where the MDC has been thinking about building a memorial is right in this area right here. So this is the proposed memorial site, and it's designed to be outside of the burial ground. But we did a ground penetrating radar survey earlier this year in June, and the area that's in white, these little white dotted line right here, this is the extent of the ground penetrating radar survey that we did in 2018. And all these white dots are anomalies that are likely grave shafts. And the reason why the MDC selected the area that's right here is it's outside of these areas where anomalies are. Well, you might already be able to guess that we did another ground penetrating radar survey in June inside this red area, and the red dots are where the results from that came back last week show where there's potential burials. And can anybody see a problem with this?
Sure.
Yeah, the burial ground keeps growing, and this is where you know, with the ground penetrating radar, it seems to indicate that you've got burials in the southern part of the memorial area, and it begs the question: is this the tip of the iceberg in terms of, you know, this is a small amount of burials as compared to the main section? Or are all the anomalies showing up in the ground penetrating radar? So the grant we just got from the state is to do ground penetrating radar in the area of the yellow. And so all this area in here. So this area in here, in addition to this area right here. And with the idea of doing this, and with the new GPR survey we're doing, instead of running the GPR at 3.5 foot intervals through the burial ground, we're closing it in at 1.5 feet to try to, you know, double the amount of anomalies we can pick up. And what we're interested in is in the area inside the yellow where we know we've got the core of the burial ground. You can begin to see this right here. There's a somewhat higher density of burials right on the edge of the burial ground. And does this density increase as you get into the core of it? Or are the anomalies still kind of scattered and you're not picking up a lot of the earlier grave shafts that might have kind of, you know, whose signature is been absorbed by the clay soils that we've got? And you know, whatever we hope for is just, it is what it is. What we hope for is to have an accurate understanding of where the burials are. And there's two scenarios for this. If we get a high density of burials in this area, where, you know, for example, where all the grave shaft depressions are, it speaks to this map here being an accurate representation of where the burials are and aren't, like up in this area. But if we get a more of a kind of a scattering of anomalies in here, it's going to make us, you know, want to, you know, rethink this area until we open up units to define through archaeology where the grave shafts are. And so this is where we're getting into the work next year. Is one of the first tasks we're going to be doing in the 2024 season is doing excavations in the area where the MDC is planning the memorial to understand what's in that location. So this, you know, what we're working on right now is, you know, is two different projects. The Overseers project with, you know, which is finishing out this 3 years of work for the home farm, and then just getting started on the burial ground. So anybody have any questions about the burial ground?
When you do the burial, do you have to have access to like a forensic archaeologist in any way, or?
We will. Yeah, that's a really good question, Gail. One of the things we're concerned about is in the excavations in the burial ground, you know, there's a chance when we open up units, say from groundhog disturbance, there could be human remains that have been brought up closer to the surface. So what we're in contract with the Institute for Historical Biology at William and Mary, who have a paleo, or have a osteological lab, human osteological lab. And so we'll either send them photos of bones we encounter, if we encounter any bone, or bring it down to their lab to look at. And in either case, you know, at that excavation unit, once there's a bone found that we can't undeniably say is not human remains, we'll cease excavations in that unit until we can understand what the bone is. And if it is human remains, stop excavation in that unit and potentially the area around that unit, because there's a chance of encountering more human remains. And then we'd move to another area. But, you know, this is a 4-acre site, so there's a lot of room, you know, to move to.
Yeah.
So
Where's the road, on this map, where's the road that the UPS guy drove down?
Yeah, that one is actually, let me show that this map right here. Here's the road right here. This is the old road trace that is gone now.
Yeah.
So yeah, the UPS guy drove through here.
Okay.
He came up the road going to the Madison Family Cemetery, and then came around here, and then drove up here, and then drove up to the visitor center that one day. So
Yeah. Okay.
Matt, I thought earlier, maybe this spring when we were sitting there and you were talking about the Descendants Cemetery, that you were even thinking, or there had been indications that there might even be burials over in the ground that's being mowed now closer to the racetrack, you know, beyond the tree area. Is that still a possibility? You know,
in this area, Tony?
No.
Above, closer
Above,
to the racetrack.
Going towards the racetrack.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's where in the GPR that we did in this area, there's only a couple of anomalies up in here, and it, you know, whether or not those are graves is hard to say, but that's why we're doing the GPR in this area along the edge of the wood line. And if the burials extend all the way up to the edge of the project area, you know what that means is we need to do more GPR. So, you know,
I thought you were actually talking about out in the grass beyond the trees.
Above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like up at the top up here.
I don't want to rule that out. Because, you know, that's, you make an assumption, and you know what that makes you and me.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Very correct.
yeah. Cindy, you had a question.
Yeah, man, it's actually very similar to, I think, Tony's question
Yes.
is, yeah, like, are you sure you're going wide enough and broad enough on the whole thing? And is there, how does this compare to other plantations, either in the Piedmont, Virginia, the whole slave owning South, in terms of how burial grounds, how much was set aside, what it tended to look like, what, how that was managed, comparative? Is there any information on that yet?
Yeah, there's in terms of in the Virginia Piedmont, there's work that was done has been done at Monticello, and what's evident there is they don't have an understanding of the extent of the burial ground that's in the middle of the parking lot. And then for other plantation community burial grounds, like over at Jacksontown, the burial ground there, like if you zoom out on this map and go to Jacksontown, let me see if I've got yeah, the Bloomfield, you've got the burial ground is up in this area. Let's see, Jacksontown, there's the edge of Chicken Mountain. Yeah, the burial ground is right in here in the wood line. It's about as large as what we've got at Montpelier. So these burial grounds are quite large, but whether or not we have the extent of it, based on the topography, I think there's a good chance that, this, the edge over here where the road seems to be pretty solid. This area in here going down into this draw, there might be more on the north side. Whether it goes down into the field is hard to say, but that's where we're just gonna have to keep on extending the GPR. Unfortunately, the GPR, like for this area right here, is about $23,000, so it's not cheap. So this is where we gotta just do the GPR, see what we get, and we're in this area. Like if you look at the LiDAR over here, this area is incredibly overgrown with a lot of down trees. We're assuming that the burial ground extends into here, and there's some really complex features in here we want to clear out this winter time and begin looking at probably in the 2025 season. But yeah, this is going to be a multi-year excavation. And then on top of that, there are massive DuPont trash dumps in this area that we're going to need to, explore as well, because they're over 100 years old. There's some really compelling and interesting artifacts in there that we just wouldn't want to have cleared away, because we're learning more and more that understanding the DuPont period has a lot to bear on what our understanding of this area is. Because the DuPont workers knew there, like in the early 20th century, they knew there was a burial ground here. In fact, there's one gentleman that remembers a burial happening here in the 1940s. So understanding this space is one that, we got to look at through the archaeology with all the deposits.
Yeah, because I'm kind of thinking it's like the whole identification memorialization, it might almost be an interim one, but you don't know yet until more and more work's done, like to really identify.
Yeah, and that's where we've asked the.
And I think they should definitely go ahead and get some recognition, memorialization, all that kind of stuff makes sense. But there's almost a part of me too that's like, no, wait, you're being too immature, or like doing it too soon, like trying to really understand what's going on before you start sticking structures in.
No, the memorialization subcommittee is putting a pause. Like they haven't even issued an RFP.
Okay.
So part of the they're waiting to issue an RFP until we get the results from the metal detector survey done and of this GPR. And then the RFP would be issued at that point. And this is a request for proposals from architectural firms. A key understanding of that RFP would be is that we're looking at a moving target for memorial design. And what the architectural firm would begin with would be working with the community on a design concept at first, while we do the archaeology beginning in the spring of next year, because we don't have money right now to do this archaeology until the spring, when we start, raising money for the match for Perry. And that's one of the things that
was one of my thoughts, Matt, was that actually, as you start to get this kicked off, maybe it would actually bring in some other major donations from people that are like, no, wait, we want this done right. So,
Yeah.
and you can be like, well, then I'm going to need another $10 million and people, so.
And that's the conversation we're having with the MDC tomorrow night, is just about this. Like, we're not doing an announcement of the Perry. You all are the first to know, is that we got the Perry gave us another 120,000. It's a challenge gift. But we're not announcing that publicly until we understand, what are the parameters for, doing the work in the burial ground, and how to move forward with that with expeditions. We're going to be doing expeditions next year. It's just a matter of how those expeditions will take place. And, I don't want to have an announcement about the Perry Foundation without understanding how expeditions are going to be taking place, because that's going to be the question that comes up. It's the whole point of, the challenge grant, and how to work these public programs into the work we're doing next year. Because, like I said, expeditions are going to happen. It's just what form do these take? And, I don't want to, I'm not going to, well, we're going to know tomorrow night. So, and have some of these questions be answered, but the whole point of this is, to give, seek consent from the descendant community first about what we do in this space, prior to, making any kind of steps forward. So, and that's really important. We get the structure now to actually do this in a way that is unfettered by any, previous roadblocks that could have been put in place for this, which we're really excited about. I really don't see how we could have ever done this kind of memorial without having parity, because it would have
right, like witness the parking lot at Monticello, like
yeah. And
why did that ever go in there?
And even the design that they've created for Monticello, I don't think the descendants are completely happy with that. It's almost like there's an area where descendants can sit separate from visitors. It's just kind of odd. There's a lot of,
It's just patronizing.
yeah, it is. So, but yeah, so and another thing that we're looking for next year again is to have descendant involvement in every expedition. And that's where Becca Davis applied. I worked with her on applying for a BIPOC grant. And this is with the state of Virginia to provide money for the MDC to take part in the excavations, especially youth, and to make this into an educational opportunity for younger people. So a lot of things being actualized, just waiting for the grants to come through. So but we're looking forward to seeing you all for Gail and Tony in less than a week. And then for the
All
rest
goes well. Yeah, we're gonna leave Saturday, but
They'll leave on Saturday. Okay. And then for the rest of you at the end of the closer in like in another 2 weeks. So, and Nancy, we'll see you on Zoom. So, and so you all know Tessa is doing a lunch and learn in about 2 weeks on the work she's been doing on the main house on the 3D creation of a database in GIS. And then in October, we're going to be doing a lunch and learn on the burial ground. And so this is, after we've gotten the have a lot of these discussions figured out, and what we're going to be doing at the burial ground. So And then I think November we'll give an update on the overseers, because by that time we'll be done with the excavations and we'll give like a summary of what we've got. So
Matt, on the overseers, is there any chance eventually that they will put some sort of a building up there, even a shadow building where the actual overseer's place was?
yeah, I mean, that's one of the goals, and we just, it depends on funding and how looking at the restoration and memorialization plans for the property as a whole, how that fits in. But that's something, as you all can guess, we're advocating for, is to have that presence.
Yeah.
But for the ghosting, we'd be set for that after this season, but for any kind of reconstruction, we'd need to do a whole lot more archaeology, just like we did in the South Yard. Need to finish the excavations.
Okay.
And Matt, I have a question. How
Yeah.
can I get more involved with the current work that's happening on the cemetery project?
On the burial ground?
Yep, yep.
We'll come on an expedition, and we'll I think through the archaeology is the main way, through the expedition programs right now, and we're going to be defining that as we go. So there's not a lot of legacy work in the burial ground like we've got with the other excavations for doing the digitizing, but there's definitely ways to be involved with once we announce Perry is to help with the fundraising on that, Wendy, that'd be great. Letting people know about what we're doing, that'd be great. That's huge.
Okay, well, I'll be there in October, or at the end of the month, or in September, so we can talk more then. All right.
Yeah, and we can talk more then. So.
Good.
All right, everybody. Well, good seeing you all, and looking forward to seeing you all very, very soon. So, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate and to reach out. And one thing that we're you all know Melissa Kerr, who's the program coordinator. She is transitioning full-time to interpretation with the guides, and we just hired a new program coordinator, April Taylor, who's a local community member. She served on the board with me on the Orange County African American Historical Society. And we're really excited about having her start, because she'll be, she's one of the first local Black community members that we've hired at Montpelier. And she's got an avid interest in history, has an incredible connection with the community. So we're hoping that, with April working here, we'll have a lot more community participation and outreach, and then also just doing the job that the coordinator does with answering the emails and all that. She has a lot of experience, programmatic experience, working with nonprofits. So we're excited she was wanting to.
When does that happen?
help us out.
Is she there? Is she there now, or?
She is going to be. Melissa's training her probably starting next week. And so Melissa's making a slow transition with this, which is great. So she'll be, because Melissa's here on the property, and she'll be training April on all things.
Speaking of other personnel changes, how long has this new lab manager been there?
Oh yeah, Liz McCaig. Liz started in during the field school in mid-June. And so she is working on her dissertation at the University of Maryland, but working full-time with us. But and then Mary's down at FPAN down in Florida, and she's all moved in down in actually right
in time for the storm.
right in front of the storm. Yeah, so Mary's going to give us firsthand accounts, give Gail and Tony the lowdown on what's going on with the storm in the Gulf. So
all right, good. Well, I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing all of you all. So thanks for tuning in today, and safe travels. Okay.
All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.